everyone. Thank you. It's great to be back at Wide Days this year. I'm Jenn Morgan, and I work for Push Entertainment. I'm a business development manager, and what Push does is essentially support fan engagement through technology services and products. So what I'm going to talk to you today about is fan engagement, a bit of history, the art and the science to it, because we'll see as we go throughout that a strategy is going to be different for every artist. So we're going to take a few highlights from there. So let's get started. What we're going to cover. So first of all, what is fan engagement? It can get confused, and so I think it's important to level set on that. Also some examples over time, and then what can you bring into your own strategy. So the three strands that we're going to look at today are integrity, commerciality, and loyalty. So what are we meaning there? Integrity is the sense of authenticity and honesty in the story that you're telling, because essentially fan engagement is telling your story to your fans and bringing them closer into your circle. Commerciality, we're looking at how we're balancing those artistic goals while also generating hopefully some revenue, and thinking about the partnerships and the technologies that you use in order to support that. And then loyalty, we're looking at building a strong connection, and that's built through the feeling of being rewarded and being recognized as a fan, and we always want to feel like we're being seen. So engagement versus marketing, this is where there can be some confusion. When we're looking at marketing, we're mainly looking at the commercial aspect. The output is going to be based on revenue, whether that's getting more sales in, increasing your basket value, repeat sales, and there's nothing wrong with that, but that's the marketing side, not the engagement side. What we're looking at today is the integrity. So what is the story that you're telling, and how are you telling that? So let's get into a little bit of history. So I called this From Stone Age to Space Age, because fan engagement has been going on forever, ever since there was a caveman around a campfire with his mate singing a song, his mate liked it. That's a fan interaction, that's fan engagement. You've had a live gig there. So I'm not going to talk all the way through the history of time, but I think that a good place to start would be with the Beatles. Their stage presence is famous, especially in the early days, some pretty wild stuff going on there. They were showing their personalities through the way that they performed, but they also brought in, that's what the fans want, so she could convince the Beatles to do that. So when we're thinking about this, we're thinking about those personal connections, and we're also thinking about the shared experience of being a fan. Thinking about that in today's context, I think bringing that live element, thinking about how you're using that space, whether it's telling stories on stage, whether it's making sure that you're visible at the merch stand, whether it's maybe giving something away, not thinking about it for any other reason than to just have a conversation, opening up as many opportunities to have that chat. Moving on, let's get into radio. So radio increased the accessibility of music to the masses. You no longer had to buy a record to be able to listen to it. It was being broadcast to you. You've got the increase in music programs and the charts. It started to build in that fan feeling of competition almost. You wanted to get your artist to the top spot. You've also got an element of interactivity there. It's something we can forget with radio. It can often feel like a one-way system, but the connection that you feel when you're listening, you feel like you're part of that conversation, but you can even get into the level of call-in shows and contests where you're really having that connection. A darker side of radio I wanted to mention was the payola scandals. So it was an unfortunate kind of a period around the 60s where DJs were taking huge amounts of money as bribes to pay to play music on their shows. An example here we've got is Alan Freed, who is one of the kind of most well-known in that space, ended up paying being charged, I don't think he ever actually managed to pay it, around $40,000 in taxes on what he had received as a result of those scandals. So what I'm saying is don't do that. But do think about how you can engage radio. You can often be thinking, oh, Radio 1, 6 Music, etc., but focusing on grassroots with community radio, hospital radio, student radio, building up those closer connections down on the ground. Next, can't talk about radio without talking about TV. So In the 80s, we had MTV launching. You've got video stars like Prince and Madonna, and you can't ignore Michael Jackson's Thriller as an iconic music video. So we're starting to really bring in visual storytelling here, bringing that identity out, not just through the music, but about every single aspect of that, those visuals and that identity. So what's interesting here is that the music video was the most expensive one made at the time, and MTV had some legislation that meant that they couldn't pay for that, but they would pay for the behind-the-scenes content, which they then turned into a documentary, which could then pay for the music video itself. So here, I think it's really important to focus on where's your behind-the-scenes content and how are you using it. Fans want to see not just the finished output, but also every single step of the way. Why did you use that color? Why is that image there? And they're getting that extra bit of the puzzle. Next, moving into the internet age. So we've got huge amounts of fan-generated content in this space. Some of the earliest websites were used for people to just talk about their favorite artists. You've got platforms that were being used. Here's the Daft Club, which my colleague Simon worked on the Discovery album. Everyone in their CD received a little credit card that had a unique number on it. They popped it in here, and then they got extra content. It seems so simple, but it's something that people really want, is just giving that extra bit more all the time and thinking about how you can build that in. You've obviously got social media expanding fan engagement, something that is great, but also we know the downsides there as well. You're constantly just fighting that algorithm. So we've got to be conscious of the area that you're exposed now. You've got to think about how you're presenting yourself, but also how you're handling the good, the bad, and the ugly alongside it. Into streaming. So streaming, obviously, you've got a huge amount of access here, similar to radio, but next level. You've got personalization in playlists, which means that fans are more likely to discover more artists, but it's how are you going to retain those after as a result. Here, data comes in really importantly. Finding out who your fans are, what they like, what their demographic is. It's so important. A lot of times it can feel like you're shooting in the dark, and getting any part of data along those lines can be really valuable. We all know that streaming royalties are not great, but it's interesting seeing the rise of Patreon at this time, supplementing income. So I've got the example here of Amanda Palmer, who offers tiered ranges from £1 per release of whatever content she's putting out, all the way up to about £250, depending on the level that you want to get involved in. So she's kind of covering both that commerciality aspect, making sure that she's getting paid, but also the fans are generating a bigger sense of community by all being part of this bigger thing. Now, subscriptions can work for some people, but at the same time, there's a huge amount of subscription fatigue that can happen. You can feel really motivated at the start, but it's maintaining that. So when you're thinking about a strategy, think about the long term when it comes to subscriptions, because it can be a tough one. Now we're into Web3, so this is a space that I am quite heavily interested in, and it can feel like we've got a lot of fatigue again about blockchain. But the decentralized aspect of this and thinking about how you've got those connections with your fans is really key here. You're not worried about Facebook or Instagram algorithms because you're garnering that connection directly. There's huge amounts of potential in different areas. So we've got NFTs themselves. So an example of that is a project I worked on with the Amazons last year. You had a physical vinyl, so you're getting your physical music. You ordered that in the pre-sale and got a digital box set NFT, which gave you content all the way up to the release. So you're combining both the chartable aspect of the vinyl alongside those extra bits of content, kind of like the Daft Club. I mean, we're repeating the cycles and we see this over and over again. It's finding new ways of technology to support that. You've also got, as I mentioned, decentralized social media platforms, thinking about where you're sharing that connection with your fans, but also thinking about where they are right now. It's important to remember that you're not just trying to bring them into your conversation, you've got to go out and find where they are. And then finally, token-based systems that are involving people in actually investing. So Web3 can be an amazing place to build up loyalty through essentially what is crowdfunding. You don't have to just be giving away JPEGs. There's so many other ways that NFTs can unlock access for fans, whether that be exclusive merch, discounts, content. So if anyone wants to talk about that more in detail, talk to me afterwards, because 15 minutes isn't long enough. So what does that mean for you and your strategy? So bringing it back to those 3 strands. When we're talking about integrity, we're making sure that the story is at the heart of everything. Who are you, what are you trying to say, and how are you saying it? Commerciality is important to consider it, and basically how you're using your data and the technology to guide those plans. Finally, the loyalty. So bringing in those fans and making them feel that they are recognized, rewarded, and respected to create a community. So I'm going to leave you now with some homework. So in terms of books, I think Everything I Need I Get From You is a great book on fan culture, specifically around One Direction fans and their influence on the internet in the early days. It's something that's so bizarre to consider, but really interesting to get into. So we've got a podcast here, which is Taylor Swift's and the music industry's next $20, looking at how Taylor's ridden the wave of different strategies over time, moving from physical to digital to today, and some research. So if you want to get really involved, Water and Music is a great platform research collective which focuses on technology and music and their interlinking. There's a small subscription, but it's a great engaged community, and great. So thank you so much for your time, and I'll be around all afternoon, so if anyone wants to grab me, have a chat, I look forward to it. Thank you.
Took